Hello and welcome to the openSAP course unit number 1. My name is Marcel Vollmer. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for SAP Ariba. I would like to start to share a couple of insights in the future for procurement and supply chain. And let me start with the speed of innovations which we see every day in today's time. And when you look a little bit back, the start for innovating, and the telephone is for me one of the best innovations what I could imagine. 75 years was the time it took until 50 million users really adapted to it and using the phone. It took only 38 years for the radio, one of the next innovations, and the internet was down to 13 years. When you now look on how fast it goes today, that Facebook only took 3 years to make it happen to become a unit, a community with 50 million users, and Twitter took 2 years, Google Plus 88 days, and guess what? Pokemon Go, it was 19 days. This really shows for me in a beautiful way how fast innovations are happening today and how fast the speed is also going. By that, why do I start with that? Basically, I want to show you and demonstrate a little bit how important it is for us in the procurement function and supply chain function really to adapt fast to the latest innovations, because this is really what is absolutely key to be competitive and to be successful in the future. So I like the term, you better Uber yourself before you get Kodak. What does it mean? Basically, what I mean with that is that you need to revolutionize your own business model and think about it, how you can disrupt the market, that you are not become one of the innovative companies what Kodak definitely was by innovating the digital camera, but later on they could not really bring it to the market and to the success. Today the digital cameras are basically almost entirely replaced by smartphones with the great quality of the cameras what they have. And this means that innovations are running so fast that we really need to find the right business model also on the procurement side to adapt to that and to define the future for the procurement function, and the same is applicable on the supply chain side. Let me go a little bit deeper in that. We see a big bunch of new disruptive technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, drones, changing the way of logistics. We also see now big data as one of the prominent buzzwords, predictive analytics, as well as then what's coming next, the prescriptive guidance, what is needed, how you can use the data you have for the future. I think it's really exciting being part of this journey and seeing how fast these innovations are really getting adapted. We will not know, and I will not go deeper. There are much better experts than I talking about the future topics. But let me just use one example. And I love the big data topic. I'm very much using data for everything what I'm doing. I was a former chief procurement officer. Data are absolutely key to define a sourcing strategy and also to define the way how you want to run your procurement function. But for me, it was even more insightful by learning from surveys that basically big data and how to work with that is the number one priority what CPOs and procurement executives in a recent study we provided this year gave us as feedback what is on the top of their agenda. This means that the procurement function is really evolving and is using new technologies also for the benefit of the own function, and is also now reconsidering the value proposition. Let me briefly explain this in a little bit more detail. I would see 4 key elements of the transformation of the procurement function in the future. I'm using my own knowledge as a chief procurement officer, but more importantly, I want to use what the CPOs I'm talking to basically every week and other procurement, finance, supply chain executives, what they provide me as feedback, what is important today. And when you look at the number one KPI in procurement, the procurement savings, everybody knows in this function the hard savings, the soft savings, as well as the cost avoidance. I think hard savings, everybody agrees on that. soft savings, cost avoidance, I think that's a little bit weak, and probably also a concept what you might consider to replace in the future by focusing on what really counts. And this is the value. The value of a procurement function, a strategic procurement function. That's the number one priority. Let me explain what I mean with that. I mean a procurement function focusing on three elements. Number one, driving supplier innovations. We see this, great examples. I mentioned the smartphone, and that's my favorite one, the Gorilla Glass, what Tim Cook, when he was running procurement and supply chain, invented. That's the reason why we can use it, why it does not have scratches. That's a great example for supplier innovation. And this is something where procurement can play a key role in finding the right suppliers and driving the innovation process. Number two, risk management. We see unforeseeable events. Fukushima is probably one of the very bad ones. In recent times, we see some hurricanes hitting the United States and the Caribbean Sea. This is something also where you in procurement need to consider how can you mitigate the risk management in these areas affecting your supply chain. The third element, what I think is important, is to ensure and secure and sustainable supply chain for your organization. This is really the main pillar, what I see, by focusing procurement and developing procurement to a strategic function focused on the value. It might end up even that a chief procurement officer might get replaced by a name he's using for his title as chief value officer. Coming now to the other three elements of that. The second element is supplier collaboration. How can you drive innovations? How can you really ensure that you drive risk management and also a sustainable supply chain? You need to collaborate with your suppliers. You need to understand them. You need to think about what really drives them and have the right platform in place. We, as SAP Ariba, we are using the Ariba network as a very powerful marketplace and trading platform connecting buyers and suppliers to provide the right environment to really focus on the strategic elements in procurement. Next element, what is important, what we see on a daily basis, is the automation. Automation is something what drives us every day, and the procurement function today is probably having strategic tasks, operational tasks, some tactical activities. And when you see what automation does, it's fairly simple. It is eliminating the operational administrative task as well as some tactical task. And by that, the procurement function might become a little bit smaller, but very powerful and focusing really on what is left. And this is the most important part, the strategic side, by adding probably also new functions like data architects or data scientists to the function and automating all the rest. The automation, by the way, does not stop in the procurement function. It really goes broader. It is the operational side of procurement, what I mentioned, so the purchase order creation and the entire transactional process behind that. But it is also one thing more. It is really looking into the finance side. When the supplier receives a purchase order, sends it back with an invoice, it is only a file what gets sent back, and basically it gets paid automatically as soon as the goods received is in the system. This is a very powerful information and automation what we are driving today, and this is fundamentally changing the procurement and the shared services, the finance side of the entire source to pay or source to settle process, if you want to include the direct material side as well. Let me come to the final element, which for me is the most important one, and this is talent management. Why is that? Because we only be successful when we have the right talents hire to retire the entire process to ensure that we attract capable people, millennials, joining now the labor market, and that we can drive successfully the transformation of procurement and really focus on what is important, the more strategic, the value-adding side of procurement. That's a little bit of perspective on the four pillars, how procurement is changing and what it means now for a CPO, a procurement executive, finance or supply chain executive, on what to focus on. Let me now go a little bit to the Ariba side, and how do we basically now use the information and the transformational activities, what I just described, for our own software. Basically, the main purpose for our software as one of the key pillars in the entire ecosystem, what we have ideally running on a HANA in-memory database, on an ERP system, SAP, but also independently we can run our cloud solutions. And the main focus what we are doing is we connect buyers and suppliers. And this is what we do with the Ariba network, and that's the main focus of the Ariba development and our innovations. What does it do, and how do we really reflect all the solutions? Ariba is probably well known from the past as market leader in the cloud for indirect procurement solutions. But it is much more in the procurement process. Experts like you watching this video now know it best, that there's not only the indirect, there's a direct space, there's also temp labor, what you need to include the contingent workforce to get your things done, to buy services at the time when you need it, with the right profile needed. And this is where we bring in our SAP Fieldglass solutions to ensure that you are not only can buy goods and complex services, what the Ariba solution does, but also adding this by components, what SAP Fieldglass does for contingent labor. There's another element what I think belongs to the source to pay, source to settle process, and this is travel. And travel has two core elements. One is the travel booking, where you really look for the next trip. And the second one is how to get reimbursed for all the expenses what you have. This is the entire portfolio what we offer in the cloud as SAP. And let me build and make it a little bit more precise on the Ariba side how powerful it is to transform a procurement function. I was a former chief procurement officer. So what I'm telling you is not only based on some marketing slides, it is really based on how we use and drink our own champagne. I like this term much more than some other terms what exist in this space. And we have used it, the Ariba solution, to fundamentally transform our own procurement function at SAP. And we could do that in a very fast time. It took us 3 months to implement SAP Ariba with the full set of strategic sourcing, the strategic sourcing suite, a new catalog, the Ariba network, with the purchase order invoice automation, as well as additional components like Discount Pro, what we could implement for Ariba. 3 months for a global organization like SAP, in 2 days' time, around 5 billion spent. That's quite a significant amount of spend, number of people affected by that, and also a fast time to really drive the transformation. But it's also important to look a little bit besides the time of implementation, which is fairly short. I'm pretty sure you might agree on that, but also what is the value of that. We could not only increase our procurement savings, and I'm only focusing on the hard savings side, by 2 percentage points, we could also bring down our transactional cost by 50% for the automated invoices and purchase orders. And this led directly to a productivity gain of 20% for our end-to-end process for the affected people in that process. And we could use the people, we could free up the work for mainly operational administrative tasks, to use them for more strategic and value-generating tasks for our own procurement function. I hope this was insightful, building a little bit the bridge, what disruptive trends in technology do, how fast it can go. I really would recommend Uber yourself before you get Kodak. Think about the transformation, the right pace of the transformation, partnering with the business, and the value of procurement, what you can implement for your own organization. Thanks for watching the first unit, and I look forward introducing the second unit in a moment.